In this tutorial, one of our Bona expert craftsmen will show you the stages of the Bona Home Step-by-Step system. With premium products and all the necessary information, the Bona Home Step-by-Step system gives you everything you need to successfully renovate your wood floor. It helps you make the right choices in the right order and use the right products in the right way until your floor looks like new again. Before you can start to renovate your wood floor, you need to remove all the furniture, carpets and curtains from the room. Only remove skirting board if you are able to without damaging the wall. It is normally not a problem to leave them. Check for protruding nails. Tap them in using a hammer. Glue or fix loose parquet blocks. Look close to radiators or where there has been previous water damage. Sweep or vacuum the floor to remove loose debris. Your floor needs to be sanded in stages with progressively finer abrasives for the best finish. Starting with grit 40, then grit 60, and finally grit 100 is typically a good procedure for most wood floors. The goal with the first, coarse abrasive, is to remove the old surface coating and to flatten the surface. Attach the coarse abrasive to the sanding machine. If the machine has variable pressure, set it to high pressure. Make sure the sanding drum is raised from the floor before starting the machine. Start the motor. Slowly release the sanding drum towards the surface. Move slowly. It's important that the sanding drum is always lowered and raised while the machine is moving. Imagine an airplane softly landing and lifting. Start to the left of the room and sand diagonally in the direction of the wood. Walk slowly forward and lift the drum gently as you reach the wall. Lower the drum again and return in the same path that you sanded. Lift the drum and create a new path to the right. Overlap about 5 to 10 centimeters on the previous path. Once the whole section has been sanded, turn the machine around and sand the other end of the room. Repeat this process until the floor is flat and all residues from the old coating have been removed. Always empty your dust bag before it is completely full to ensure the most optimal dust collection. Attach a grit 40 abrasive to an edger and start sanding in one of the corners. Move the machine in small circles, going from left to right. Don't place any body weight on the machine, just let it do the work. Sand until all old coating is gone. Empty the dust bag. Set the drum sander to medium pressure and attach a grit 60 abrasive. Start sanding in the opposite corner and follow the direction of the wood. Move slowly and return in the same path that you have sanded. Check that you have emptied the dust bag. Attach a grit 60 abrasive and sand the edges of the room to remove scratches and smooth the surface. If you plan on filling gaps in the floor with a joint filler later, you will need some of the wood dust from the sanding. Empty the dust bag and be sure to collect only clean wood dust. Put it in a separate container for later. Now it's time to remove the old coating from the corners. It's most efficient to start by scraping off the majority of the old coating with a scraper. Finish off by sanding with a fine sandpaper. You don't always need to fill the gaps in the floor, but it gives the surface a finer, more professional impression. The joint filler is intended for small gaps between 0.1 to 2 mm and on floors that are dimensionally stable. Shake the Bona gap filler container and mix its contents with the wood dust you collected from the medium edge sanding. Either do this directly on the floor or mix it in a separate container, which might be easier. The typical mixing ratio is approximately 1 part wood dust to 3 parts filler. Try to achieve a consistency similar to yogurt. Pour the mix onto the floor and distribute it with a stainless steel trowel. For best filling, apply diagonally to the wood direction. If the mix becomes too thick and hard to work with, add more filler to lower viscosity. Let dry 30 to 60 minutes. If the gap is large, then the filler may slump. In that case, it will require a second application. Joint filling is not recommended for large cracks, plank or end-grain floors, or parquet with beveled edges. If you have used gap filler, remove any residue left. Do this at the same time as the final fine sanding. Start with the edges, attach a Grit 100 abrasive to the edge sander and sand all the edges of the room. Finally, remove the filler and fine sand from the rest of the floor using the drum sander with abrasive Grit 100. Sand systematically and ensure there are no remaining filler residues. Varnish is the most common wood floor surface treatment, favored for its high wear resistance and low maintenance. Compared to oil and hard wax oil, varnish gives the wood a light color, more consistent with natural wood. The floor is treated with two different types of varnish, a primer, then a top coat. The primer produces a well-bodied surface and emphasizes the color and structure of the wood. The top coat provides durability and decides the gloss level of the surface. Avoid direct sunlight on the floor. Pull down curtains if you need to. Avoid any type of draft to ensure no particles dry in the wet varnish. Vacuum the floor carefully. To apply, you will need a good quality microfiber roller, an extension bar, brush, and a container tray to pour the finish in. It is also good to have some paper and a plastic bag handy in case of spills, and somewhere to place the tools when you have finished. Shake the can thoroughly. The primer can be poured directly onto the floor or into a tray. Imagine the floor divided in sections and plan how you will apply the primer. Start by applying primer with a brush to the inner corners and edges of the floor. Smooth out the edge application with a roller and roll out primer to the remaining part of the section. Distribute across the grain and smooth out along the grain. There is no need to put any pressure on the roller. Allow it to roll freely and be generous with primer. Continue with the edges on the next section and roll the center. Overlap the previous section by approximately 20 centimeters. When the entire floor has been treated, allow it to dry fully 1 to 3 hours. When the floor is fully dried, apply the top coat varnish in the same way as the primer varnish described previously. For best result, don't put the overlap at the same place. Allow to dry overnight or for at least 16 hours. During treatment of the floor, some of the wood fibers will rise and the surface will feel rough. It is essential to sand lightly between layers of top coat varnish for a smooth finish. Do this either with a buffing machine and a sanding screen grit 150 or by hand using a sanding block. Carefully vacuum the floor and wipe away the final dust with a cloth. Apply a final layer of varnish. Let dry for 1 to 4 hours. Done! You can carefully return furniture to the room 24 hours after the final application, but wait at least 1 week before laying any carpets. Enjoy your renovated floor.